Teach my dog tricks.
I know. What will you do without me? You might just die.
I might have just died. I might have just drowned in math work.
Who knows what you will do without me?
Drowned in math.
Maybe it's just y'all.
Well, what are we going to do when you're gone?
Math.
Are they going to teach us?
Yes.
Who is it going to be?
Maybe. We got so many months away to worry about that.
Actually, it's coming quicker.
Well, you know, I would worry about that, but I'm too busy grading on these makeup papers still. So,
Well, none of those makeup papers are mine.
this
So.
is darn true. Because Natalie Ellison was on it.
You're always bothering me.
So you got right for 2 points. Sitting there quietly trying to pay attention, you can get 2 points. Okay. So, yeah, table 3, you can have 2 points. Table 4, since you're all by yourself, you can have 2 points. Table 2, you were talking to me, you can have 2 points. Notice the 2 tables I did not give 2 points to. Put it together.
What we do?
While you were packing. Better be glad I don't take them away. Okay, clearly you need me, which is terribly, terribly, terribly annoying. So, here, let me help you some more. Apparently. If you think that it's a good idea to just sit and work on makeup work for me all day, that's fine, and you can do what you feel like you need to do, boo. But 1, you're killing your second 9 weeks grade already. You are. You're killing it already. Way to go. And then 2, you've forgotten about a very important grade that I type in every week with those number strips. And guess what? Some groups have not been rocking it with the number strips this week. My normal groups are that rock it or rocking. But I got at least 2 groups that are not rocking it like they normally do. It is in the struggle, and it will definitely impact your grade. Because I put these number strips in that 30% category. So for instance, me having to talk over you, table 3 get another point. For instance, me having to talk over you, that's one problem. And then in a few minutes when I stop rambling and expect you to do math, if your group chooses to not do math, ain't no way I'm moving you up. But if your group is productive and on it, I'm willing to give over a 5 today. But if your group is the group with the phone people, no wonder we were struggling, and no wonder we're going to continue to struggle, and ain't no way I'm going to let you be a 5 today. Ain't no way. Okay, so let's talk about the math workshops that you were ignoring, and then let's talk about your assignment for today. For the math workshops that you are ignoring, we actually have to factor. There is no GCF. So we talked about if there were 3 terms, first thing we always do is there a GCF? There is no GCF, so instead I actually have to factor. If you've forgotten how to factor, because for some reason that tends to leave people's brains, which is sad, we're trying to figure out 2 things that add, well, it's just sad because we do it every year. We add what 2 things add to give you the middle. Oh, that's why you're one.
Yeah. It's not focusing.
Okay, we want to figure out 2 things that, Alonde, I don't care where you sit, but you can't sit with them. 2, because y'all are on my last nerves. 2 things that add to give you the middle, and 2 things that multiply to give you a negative 32 in the end. So I'm looking for factors. I need 2 numbers that add to negative 4 and 2 numbers that multiply to negative 32. It wasn't a euphemism, it was a for real. You best pick up your stuff and move, please. Thank you, dear. Will is already distracted enough. He needs no more distractions. 4 and 1. 4 times what? You need 2 numbers.
4 times 8.
4 times 8 is negative 32, but I have to pick one of them. 4 times 8 is 32, but I need
Negative 8.
So it has to be negative 8, because 4 plus negative 8 is negative 4. Perfect. I'm going to give it to 1, 2, and 3. Can I have a point? It should be m plus 4 and m minus 8. That's how we factor. So if we go to our next problem, we're trying to think of 2 things that add to give me that middle term, because again, there's no GCF. So something that adds to give me negative 5, and something that multiplies to give me that last term, which is negative 66. What multiplies to give you 66?
11 and 6.
11 and 6. Gracie, you get a point. Now, but we want a negative 5. Well, 11 minus 6 would be positive 5.
11, negative 11.
It has to be negative 11. And negative 11 plus 6 gives you a negative 5. So I already gave you a point, Gracie. I'm going to save it. So z minus 11, z plus 6. Perfect. Negative 11 plus 6 is negative 5. Negative 11 times 6 is negative 66. Those two numbers met our qualifications. So it was negative 11, so I wrote z minus 11. It was positive 6, so I wrote z plus 6. You did this in Algebra 1, and I taught a lot of you, well, not a lot of you, but a handful of you in geometry last year, and we did this in our bell ringers last year. So you are actually supposed to remember this. Okay, we get to number 3. We want two things that add to give me 13. Your group gets another point. Two things that multiply to give you 40. That is going to be 5 times 8 and 5 times 8. 5 plus 8 and 5 times 8, because they add to 13 and give you 40. You're good at this. So it's going to be y plus 5 and y plus 8. Not at all. Great question. Get another. Okay, let's do number 4. But before I go crazy and start thinking about what multiplies, and how many terms do you see on the screen? 2. So we can actually do what we were doing. What we were doing only works for 3 terms. Is there a GCF we can pull out of both?
Yes.
What is that number?
6.
Okay, you can pull out a 6. Can you pull out anything else?
XY.
So if you pull out a 6xyj, you can get another point. You would be left with
6x
minus
8y.
perfect, but that means we didn't pull out the big enough thing, did we? We should have pulled out 12. And you can have another point for that. Oh, I was going to give you one, and then I saw him over. He killed it. Sorry. If you pull out a 12xy, you'd be left with a 3x minus 4y. That would have been better. There was a bigger number. Okay, are there any questions about these math workshops? Then we need to talk about what we're going to do today. So yesterday we did 2 problems. I need you to pull out your packet from yesterday. We did 2 problems with systems of equations, and there were 3 variables, 3 unknowns. You had 1 problem you were supposed to do for homework, and I hope you got stuck.
No solution.
Yeah, good. Okay, so what was supposed to happen is you should have done, sadly, elimination all 3 times. And the 3rd time you did elimination, all the variables died, and you ended up with like 0 equals 2, or 0 equals some number. Well, that's crazy, so we still put no solution. It's still got the no solution and infinitely many solutions that we did with 2 equations, 2 unknowns. It's still going to happen. And in fact, today we're going to practice that. So I gave you a coloring page. I'm actually going to put the color answer on the screen. Let's talk about how a coloring page works, because trust me, some still get a little confused. So for instance, apparently the answer to number 1, because number 1 is this black triangle, the answer to number 1 is, the answer that was 1 is black. Okay, so let's look at your front and I'll show you what you're supposed to do. Okay, so I get that we're supposed to get 3 answers, right? X, Y, and Z. I get that, and that's great. But how you color it, it tells you over here. For number 1, you only color whatever number you got for X. So number 9 was the black piece. Apparently on number 9, Z was 1. And in fact, I'll actually go ahead, and I'll be even nicer than this, I'll go ahead and post the whole answers to all the ordered pairs. I think that'd be even nicer than the coloring, don't you, Mrs. Dresser?
Yep.
I think that would be even nicer, but before I let you release you and say, Paige, go do all the things, we need to work a hard one first. Which of these problems looks harder than the others?
Number 8.
Number 8.
Number 8? Which of these problems looks harder than another? 6 does, and you can have a point for that. And there are some others that look hard, so let's circle the hard ones. 6 looks hard.
6.
What else looks hard?
All.
Not all.
That's 10.
Let's see.
4.
10 does look hard, so you can get a point for that. Who said 4?
We did.
4 looks hard, you can get a point for that. 4 looks the hardest, to be honest. Which other ones look hard? 9 looks hard, you can have a point for that.
8.
And I believe that, oh, I see one more and it's not 8.
2. Just kidding.
Not 2. I do see 3, and you know, I lied, there's another after that. The person who said 3 can have a point, and the person who said 7 can have a point. So, wow. 6 of them are, and I quote, hard. And why are these problems harder than the others? They don't. Who are you right now? You are like my favorite person today. Get another point for that. Okay, so a variable is missing. So, and then plus some of them aren't in what form?
Standard.
Natalie Ellison, you get you another point for that. So it's really annoying, for instance, on number 3, they're not all in standard form. And not only are they not all in standard form, but some of them are missing variables. Like V, that middle line doesn't have a Y. So my suggestions is, I've got 2 of them. So we practiced yesterday, we did elimination 3 times. Elimination, elimination with the first 2. So you can do elimination with, for instance, we numbered our equations. Let me give you a brief reminder. We would number our equations 1, 2, and 3. Then we would do elimination with, let's say, 1 and 2. And then we would do elimination with, let's say, 2 and 3. And thankfully, when we did this elimination, it gave us new equations, and I called them 4 and 5. And what was nice about 4 and 5 is they only had 2 variables. And so sadly, we had to do elimination one last time with 4 and 5 just to get one answer. And then you still have to plug it back in to get all your other answers. So it's very time-consuming and very tedious. And if you make a tiny mistake, suddenly it's over. So the good news is, all of these have pretty answers. There are no decimals whatsoever. But the bad news is, like number 3, it's not in the order we would like it to be in. So I have 2 suggestions for you. If Braxton is a creature of habit, and he likes things to look a certain way, he can change all of them to standard form. Maybe he wants it to be, that top line's fine. He'll just leave it like it is. That middle line, he's got to move the y, the bottom line, he's got to move the y over and the z over. So maybe he makes it x minus 5y plus z equals 23. And then with that middle one, he moves the x over, so he has 3x, positive 3x. He moves the x over. He still has the negative 1. He still has a z. And what should he put for y? He should put 0y because there are no y. So again, my suggestion for the ones that we circled is to rearrange them and put them all back into standard form. If you put them all back into standard form, now Hal's like, well, this is easy. If I multiply that top line by 3 and the bottom line by 3, I'll have a negative 3x and positive 3x, they'll die. A positive 3x and negative 3x, they'll die. So I can kill off x's. And you can go about our life as usual. And that's great. And you can definitely do that. And that's going to be my suggestion. Now, is there an easier way? Yes. But this requires you to, I don't know, love substitution? So, for instance, I know what z is. I could replace z in this equation with x's, and then I would already just have x's and y's. So you could use substitution and do a little fun math, and like sometimes I use substitution, sometimes I use elimination. But if you're like me and you're a creature of habit, then that's not a great idea. So what I would do instead is rewrite them all into standard form and just put a 0 in the spot of the variable that we're missing. Are there any questions about that? Again, Arturo can figure out an easier way. There is, I'm not saying there's not one, there is an easier way. But if we're creatures of habit and just trying to practice exactly what we did yesterday, rewriting it like this would be easiest for us today. Okay, I'm going to leave that on the screen for a minute and let you write that down.